So, in our last class, we had stopped discussing up until this point of SWOT analysis. In our today's class, we shall start from the basic component of external environment. I do understand that you have studied this a lot of time, but you observe, I've tried to put it in a different way. The micro environment and the macro environment that we have, some concepts that weren't discussed, and some of the factors and some of the concepts that we have already discussed. But let us keep it in as brief as possible and let us discuss this. So, before we start, this external environment, as we always tell, it includes all those factors which are definitely external to the organization and all of these factors which has the potential to affect the organization. So now speaking about this effect, the effects can be those which are favorable to the organization, and it can also include all those effects which are adverse to the organization. Now, in the external environment, there exist the opportunities and threats. And that is why it becomes necessary that organization should carefully scan external environment so that it can identify all these opportunities that it can use of and all the threats that it has to face. So speaking about this opportunity, now what can we tell about this? Now opportunity is such an element of attractiveness or attractive arena, which a particular organization can leverage itself and thereby get maximum advantage. On the other hand, the threat. Now, threats are always challenging to the organization. And these challenges here are posed by external environment, and if at all the organization fails to take good care of this, all such challenges, it can substantially, make the organization collapse or go away from the market. So the main components, as you can see in the slide, of the external environment are macro and micro environment. Now, macro environment, when we tell, it consists of all those factors which affect, all the business environment. It can affect directly or indirectly, but it affects in a general manner, irrespective of the industry. But whereas micro environment, it consists of those factors specifically which affects a industry. So in that first one that we have is macro environment. In that we have taken natural environment. Now here we are speaking about the natural environment in particular. And in recent days you might have observed that environmental issue, they have become major concern all over the globe. Now this human needs, it is never ending in nature, and already this humans needs, it has consumed significant part of the resources of the earth. And if you observe the unhalted and ruthless commercial activities, they have resulted in making earth impaired, and also ability to sustain, future generations. So it has been proved now that beyond any doubt that due to this, you know, huge exploitation of the earth that is being done by humans, now there is neither pure air to breathe nor pure water to drink. No amount of, material wellness that we have can substitute for pure air and pure water to drink. So no amount of, you know money can substitute for these two things. We can observe global warming, depletion of ozone layer, acid rains, or changing climates, and the reducing biodiversity. Now these are some of the major environmental concerns. So these unexpected natural phenomena, they are occurring largely due to exploitation of earth by human. Now humans, they are consuming natural resource uh, at a rate, which is far more than the regeneration rate. Now if at all the regeneration rate and the consuming rate would have been same, then there would have been no such huge problem. But then when we compare the humans consuming rate, that with of the natural, regeneration rate, the regeneration rate is far below the consuming rate, and that has become a problem. And nowadays, people are, having increased awareness in this regard. Now, society, if we take in general, it has understood, that environment should be protected not only for the present, but it has to be protected for future generation also. And here we speak about sustainability. So the concept of, sustainability is strengthening among society. So what is the sustainability? Sustainability means meeting the needs of the present generation in such a manner, without compromising the ability of future generation to meet their needs. So people have started raising, voice against exploitation of natural environment. And as a consequences of business, are under pressure to embrace the concept of sustainability into its decision and operation. People nowadays, they view business as a part of society that should operate for development of society. So now business is not, far away from society, but it has become an integral component of society. Now, which should work as per, the norms of the society. So it is now that business should adopt sustainable practices and also should function so that it can contribute towards the objective of this sustainability that we spoke of. Then we have this societal environment. Now, with this increased awareness in the society that is happening, the expectation of society from the business also, it has undergone radical changes nowadays. Nowadays, this society, it considers business as one of the integral part within the society. And it also considers that the business should always function for the betterment of society. And because of all this, the expectation of the society, it is imposing a lot of duties on the business, which are meant to be fulfilled by them. So these duties, what do we call that normally? We know it in the term of corporate social responsibility. So today, the entire gamut of this corporate social responsibility, it has changed, and now it is, not limited to personal ethics of owner. Nowadays, the business are expected to, discharge corporate social responsibility as per the norms of the society and not as per, their own desire. So in India, we have, as per Section 135 of Companies Act 2013, there are particular type of companies which have to compulsorily spend an amount of their profit on corporate social responsibility. So besides the society expectation, we have demographic factors also, which is important when we speak about societal environment. So demographic factors include, age distribution of the population, the gender ratio, the educational level, religious and ethnic composition, population growth, and many other things. The third one that we have is economic environment. So here when we speak of economic environment, we can take, it in terms of global economic environment and also the macroeconomic environment variables. In today's world, there are various economics which are converging, especially at the global level. Now we have World Trade Center and with its World Trade Organization, and with its increasing influence, it has nearly covered world into flat platform where almost, all the countries can compete fairly with no significant regional influence. Now, if we observe and compare, there is reduction of tariff all around the world due to, all the important exports of goods and services has gone up significantly. Now, another aspect is that we have foreign direct investment. Now, this foreign direct investment, they are occurring freely due to, removal of many restrictions by countries who have become the members of World Trade Organization. And similarly, we have capital markets which have become globalized in today's business world, and this business, it need to be dependent upon one country for, financing its proposals. Now there are various macroeconomic variables on which the prospect of the business depends. The rising price of oil are the, indicator of boom, whereas declining price of the oil, it is the indicator of a recession. Now, if there is declining interest rate with the rise in the asset price, all those are sign of, expanding economy. Whereas rising interest rate with fall in, asset price, it is a sign of contracting economy. We have loose monetary policy, then it would result in inflation, which can further, eventually weed out all the benefits of the declined interest rates. Whereas if we have high rate growth of per capita income, it is an indicator of boom. And if at all we have low rate of growth of per capita income, then it indicates that there is a recession. So currency convertibility. Now, even that is one of the important factors that can be spoken of. Now this currency convertibility, it may affect, the multinational concern to repatriate profits. So there are number of economic variables that can help an organization to determine its prospects in the future. So along with that, we have the fourth one, that is technological environment. In today's world, technological development, it is taking place at a very fast rate than what we can analyze it of or understand it of. Technology, that was considered best at one time, may become useless within a very short time period nowadays. So if we see, take the example of the 2G, 3G, from one to other, to shift from first generation to second generation, second to third generation, it has taken very shorter time. That is to tell, this first generation technology, it was considered as one of the radical innovation in terms of wireless communication back in 1980s, and it took almost 10 years for 2G technology in the year 91, and 3G technology was succeeded in the year 2001, and the 4G technology, it came as soon within 7 years, that is 2008. It took over 3G technology. So that is how from one phase to one phase, nowadays the technology, it is moving faster and faster. You can observe the rate of changes in terms of technology, especially in films or the cameras. These were, it once was considered as sophisticated technologies, and it has become now, redundant due to innovation of digital camera technology. So the technological development, through this process of creative destruction, it has created new avenues, and also the cost of existing avenues. So a well, established organization, it may fade away over time due to technological development. Hence, an organization, it may fade away over time due to, technological development. So the organization, it should scan technological development so as to, identify new opportunities or the threats. Now, new technological development, it may present opportunities, but it also poses, significant threats to many established organizations. Now, if technological development, it results that it poses significant threat, to existing organization, then it must strategically adopt new technology to counter all the threats that it has to face. Now, speaking about this technological threat, technological development, sometimes it is also related to, low cost technology. So in such cases, an organization could strategically adopt, new technology, and thereby increase its overall efficiency. Now sometimes, um, it may be reverse way, that, that is, new technology is expensive, but organization has to adopt it compulsorily due to societal or legal pressure. We can take example of, today's business. Today's sustainability issue, it has become major concern among organizations, and to cope up with this issue, organizations are adopting, expensive green technologies. Now, one more that we can speak of under macro environment is political and legal environment. That is to tell, some non-market factors, they are also very important for organization. So the ideology of the government, that is the one which is in the power, it is very crucial from organization's point of view. Now, organization, it has to seriously implement, into its function, the societal consideration. Mm. Now, if at all the organization, Uh, that is to tell, if the organization is situated in such a state where the societal consideration is such that it has elected government which has the ideology of uh, you know those who want the society, or that the power would be there in the state, then probably the organization might have some kind of problem. Converse to that, if at all the organization, it can work freely in case of elected government is of capitalist ideology. So the stability of this elected government and its policies becomes very important. If elected government and its policies are unstable, then definitely for the business organization, future becomes risky and uncertain. However, if the stability of the elected government and its policy makes future less risky and uncertain, government approach to monetary, fiscal, foreign and other policies will also affect the business environment. So, speaking about this, we have here this legal environment also. Now, this legal environment, it is shaped by existing legal system. Now, if intellectual and property rights they are adequately protected, then it would provide more conducive environment for business. Business and consumer, or let us take an example before that. We have something called as pollution haven hypothesis. Now, it is one of the outcomes of legal environment. Now, as per this hypothesis, the multinational corporations shift to those countries where law and control of pollution would be less strict. Hence, if laws on control of pollution are not strong, then it would provide a conducive environment for business. Now, business and consumer laws also shape up the business environment. If business laws, um, if they are, appropriate and as per international norms, then it would ensure enforceability of, contracts and thereby provides favorable condition for business. Now, strict consumer laws appropriately ensure, consumer safety, but it increases the risk of business. And as against this, lenient consumer laws, they do not ensure adequate consumer safety, but it decreases the risk of business. So these are, some of the macro environment variables which normally shape up the general business environment for all businesses. So this general business environment, it affects all the business directly or indirectly, irrespective of the industry to which the business belongs to. So this is something how you can present it, the general and industrial environment. In the heart of the diagram, you have micro environment, that is industry specific environment, and the outer circle is that of general and business environment. Now, this economic environment, technological environment, political and legal environment may affect some industries in a certain particular way, whereas you have natural and societal environment. Uh, which are irrespective of which type of industry it is, what size the business is, where it is situated, irrespective of all those things. Now, it affects the entire business industry. So this is also can be called as natural environment. As again this we have general business environment. This is general business as well as industry environment. So what is an industry? So an industry, what is it? It is a group of similar organization that offer goods and services that can be similar and substitute of each other, and they target the consumer with similar needs. Now this general business environment, it affects all the organization in general. But on the other hand, industrial environment, it affects those organization, specifically the ones analysis that we take. That is to tell which are in same industry. So some of the factors which affect industrial environment, first one definitely it is market structure. Now this industrial environment, it is mainly influenced by market structure. So this market structure, it is determined by some of the factors such as the number of the existing organization which is already there in the industry. Now if at all there are large number of firms in an industry, then existing firms, they can only earn normal profits. However, if there are small numbers of firms in the market, then it can lead to intense competition among the existing firms. So those firms which emerge as winners in the competition, it is possible that they can earn abnormal profits. The other factor may be barriers to entry. Now, if there are high barriers to entry, then there will be less risk of entry of new firms in an industry. So, in such scenarios, all the existing firms, they can continue to earn abnormal profit. Now, the high barriers to entry, it may exist in the form of high initial capital cost the organization has to spend, or significant economies of scales which are being enjoyed by the existing firms, or the high level of promotional cost which the organization has to face for introducing of new product in the market, or use of inaccessible and sophisticated technology by existing firms, the government policy, etc. Now, as against to this, if there are low barriers to entry, then there will be high risk of new entry, thereby reducing the profit margin of the existing firms. And then there can also be barriers to exit. So this barriers to exist, it is normally in the form of high sunk cost. That is, firm after investing high amount of capital in one industry, it cannot use that capital in another industry, and thus that capital becomes useless if firms want to switch over another industry. So if sunk costs are high, then it serves both as entry and exit barrier, since there exists high sunk cost, and it prevents another firms to enter into industry, and also existing firm to exit the industry. So thus, in such a case, there is a less risk of new entry, thereby, presenting opportunity to existing firms to earn abnormal profits. And one more factor is number of organizations which offers a close substitute. Now, competition, it may not come only from same products, but also it can be from substitute products by targeting same needs of consumers. If switching cost, that is the cost associated with switching to substitute product, if it is low, there is high risk of rivalry with substitute product. However, if switching cost is high, then it prevents consumer to switch over substitute product and thereby decreasing risk of rivalry with substitute product. Then the next one that exists is the power of suppliers. Now these suppliers, they supply materials to a firm, which through production process are converted into final product by firm. So the attractiveness of any industry, it is also affected by the power of suppliers. Now, if there are only few number of suppliers in the market, then it definitely increases the power of supplier by reducing the attractiveness of the industry. And similarly, along with this, we have switching cost. Now, if at all it is high, now switching cost here refers to the cost which are associated with the changing of the supplier. Then it also increases the power of the supplier. Now, if the supplier, if he enjoys high power, then they can raise the price of the materials or reduce the quality of materials. Conversely, if suppliers do not have high power, then suppliers' ability to raise price or reduce quality, it is significantly reduced, and thereby it makes industry more attractive. Then we have power of buyers. Now buyers, they also have significant impact on industry. Now if buyers are in position to reduce the price or increase the quality of the product, then their impact on the industry is definitely going to be significant. So if buyer is large organization and it is purchasing in bulk quantities, then it enjoys normally monopolistic advantage, and as such it can force firm to reduce their price. Similarly, if buyers has potential to integrate backward, then it would increase buyer's power. Now, if there is low switching cost, it would also increase the power of buyer. However, on the other hand, if buyers are not powerful, then definitely they cannot bring down the prices of the product, or they can increase the quality of the product, and thereby reducing the impact of buyers on industry. Then we have power of shareholders and stakeholders. Now, shareholders and stakeholders, such as employees, union, lenders, government, local community, they also exercise, consider influence on industry. So, if local communities are sufficiently aware, then it would force, firm to adopt sustainable and social responsible practice into its operation. So a strong trade union, it can force the firm to raise wages of employees, and strong lenders can impose many restrictions on firm. Now if shareholders are more socially conscious, then they can force company to adopt responsible practice into its operation. But then it can work otherwise also, that that is, if shareholders only concerned with their material welfare, then they can force firm to be less responsible towards society. So this is all about the general environment. So the next that we have is competitive and industrial analysis. Now, uh, the environment in which the business organization operates. Now, it will have a great influence on the business's performance. Now, the success or failure of any organization strategies, it is based on the fundamental understanding of its external environment. Now, we spoke so many about the general environment, the micro, the macro, but it should be noted that any change in the general environment, it has the potential to influence the organization's competitive environment, and will also have an effect that goes beyond the firms or specific industry. Now, look at the image that has been put up. Now, this Hitkari potteries. Now it is a popular bone china crockery brand. Now till 2000, it slowly lost ground to competitors like La Opela and Corel. Now this mainly happened because the firm it failed to scan the general environment for signs of change, like, especially such as social change. So the societal change underway was the change in the lifestyle of potential consumer. Now with more and more number of women especially joining the workforce, the ladies, they were facing shortage of time for their household chores. Therefore, to strike a balance between their professional and personal and family lives, all these modern working women, they were looking for the crockery that was convenient to use, unbreakable, or chip resistant and microwave safe. So this Hitkari failed to notice this social change in general business environment, and it had to face stiff competition from companies like Laopela and Korin, which introduced ceramic crockery that could meet the emergent needs of the consumers. Therefore, it is very much important that the organization scans the general environment and identify the factors which have the ability to influence or fundamentally change the industry within which they compete. So we are speaking about this competitive environment. Now the competitive environment, it refers to a system, a dynamic one, in which an organization competes
and also operates. Now, this system, it is generally referred to as uh, the industry group or the strategic group. Now, this industry, it can be defined, as a group of all those firms which are producing or rendering service or producing the same product or products that are very close substitutes of one another. So that is our industry. Then what is this strategic group? Now the strategic groups, they are the subgroups, small groups of firm within an industry that have similar characteristics and compete on similar basis. So the competition between firms within a strategic group, it is greater than the companies that fall outside the strategic group. That is to tell, all the companies manufacturing the cell phones, they collectively represents the mobile collectively represents the mobile industry, whereas the companies that manufacture smartphone, androids, or an android as an operating system, they are termed as strategic group as they compete on similar technology platform when compared with the rest of the firms that manufacture first generation cell phones. So these groups, they have very little in common, and therefore they pay little attention to each other when planning for competitive moves. But the companies that manufacture smartphones, that is Windows, iOS as an operating system, they have great deal of commonality with the manufacturers of smartphones. That is the Android ones. Consequently, the firms within this group, they are strong rivals. But then there may be many different characteristics onto which the strategic groups can be distinguished from each other. That is product quality, the geographical coverage, service level, and all other. So now this concept of this strategic group, it is very much helpful for the organizations to know more about their direct rivals and also the basis on which the competitive rivalry is likely to happen within these groups. And that is where it becomes imperative for the organizations to always have an in-depth understanding of industry competitive characteristics as a part of external analysis and to help them shape their future strategies. So now whenever we speak of competitive strategy or this competitive analysis, then definitely we do the analysis from one of the famous model that we have, that is Michael Porter's 5 force framework. So as you can see and as you know, this 5 force framework, it is developed by Michael Porter, and this person is the mostly and this framework that has been developed, it is most widely used analytical tool through which we assess the competitive environment. Now if you can observe this particular framework close enough, This five force analysis, it is undertaken from the perspective of the incumbent or the already existing organizations and also the new entrant organization. Now, the intensity of competition within the industry is of utmost concern for any organization. So, this framework, it helps the organizations to determine the intensity of rivalry, especially by examining the interaction of five competitive force. uh, and that is why the combined strength of these five forces, which helps the organization to determine the industry attractiveness and eventually the profit of potential within a given industry. So the five forces are: first one is threat of new entrant, then you have bargaining power of buyers, we have bargaining power of suppliers, the fourth one is the threat of substitute product or services, and we have uh, intensity of rivalry among firms in an industry, which is the heart of the diagram. So on to the evaluation of the strength of these forces. High force can be looked upon as a threat as it reduces profitability, whereas a low force would mean an opportunity that allows the firm to earn more profit. Now this particular diagram, it has been adopted from Michael Porter's competitive strategy, which was published by Fury Press in the year 1980. So now whenever we tell this competitive framework, it becomes very necessary that we look into each one of that in detail. So the first one, let us take, that is threat of new entrants. Now any industry that has the potential for growth and that it has perceived to be profitable, it tends to attract new entrants. Now these new entrants, they are the firms that are interested in investment, especially to avail the opportunities which lies ahead within the industry. Now, if new firms are able to come into an industry, then the existing firms have to either share certain portion of the growing sales with the large number of competing firms, or they have to part of with some of its own market share. So either that way or this way, the existing firms, they have to face declining sales volume and revenue, ultimately leading to fall in the new entries profits. So the possibility that a firm enters from outside into one industry, it basically depends upon two factors. First one is the barriers to entry, and the second one is the expected retaliation, or the what we can tell strong reaction from the existing firms which are already there in the market. So, a high entry barrier, it implies that, there would be lesser likelihood for new firms to make an entry into an industry. At the first instance, or, will be abstained from establishing themselves before they may pose competition to the existing firms.
And therefore, the higher entry barriers, it keeps the prospective entrants at a distance from an industry. So, some of the possible barriers could be the ones that has been put up in your slide. That is brand benefits, you have access to distribution channel, the switching cost, product differentiation, economies of scale, and capital requirement. So the first one is brand benefits. So buyers are often attached to established brands, and to break through these well placed brands, it becomes a challenge for the newcomers. So the new entrants, they have to struggle and they have to redefine their strategy so as to bring in a change in the mindset of the consumers. We can take an example. Now we have Johnson and Johnson or J&J. It has ruled the market for almost past 60 to 70 years in the baby care segment. Whereas companies like Marico, Dauber or Wipro or Himalaya, they have tried their hand at baby care, but with little success. So this is primarily because as far as baby is concerned, the mothers they do not want to risk experimenting with new brands in the market. They want products which are completely trusted and safe. So this J&J products they have thus established itself as a most trusted brand not only for one particular time but over a generation of time period. And they have put up a lot of advertisement where they claim that how well they are for the babies. They have put up one where they tell that setting the standard, and at Johnson's we work to set the standard in the industry, and in fact our best for baby standard, it goes beyond government required safety standards. So that is how they have established themselves in the market. The second one is the access to distribution channel. The most existing companies, especially in the FMCG or fast moving consumer goods and automobile industry, they are found to have a strong distribution channel, which is very difficult for a new entrant to penetrate. We can take Lay's potato chips, by PepsiCo India. It have well-established distribution channel that has made its product available to the consumer at an arm's length. So this has not only posed a challenge to products like Bingo by ITC, but also has refrained the local players from exhibiting or establishing themselves in the industry. The same way there is Suzuki Maruti in the automobile industry, which has established a vast network of dealers and service centers across the length and breadth of the country, making it the most affordable car in India. So, such deeply enriched distribution network, they normally can act as barrier to entry of the new entry. Then we have this government policy. Then we have the third one, that is government policy. So government policy, they may also act as entry barrier. For the one example that we can speak is uh, we have 5 by 20 rule by government. It has restricted the Indian aviation company from flying in international skies and making the new companies lose to the opportunity before the existing airlines in aviation industry. So that example we can take. So, by the way, what is this 5 by 20 rule that is there in Indian aviation industry? Now, if at all you do not know, uh, this particular rule, that is 5 by 20 rule of Indian aviation industry, the government of India introduced it in civil aviation industry in 2004. So this particular rule, it barred all the domestic carriers from flying in the international sky until they had at least 5 years of domestic flying experience and at least a fleet of minimum 20 airplanes. So the so now, according to the industry insiders, you do know what is industry insiders. Now, there was a person called as Naresh Goyal, the chairman of Jet Airways back then. So, one of the oldest private airlines in India. He was the man behind the lobbying for the rule, so as to prevent its competitors from flying abroad and restricting them from capturing India's international routes. So in 2007-8, when the no-frills airlines like India, Indigo, Go Air, or the SpiceJet, they were busy consolidating their position at home, the 5 by 20 rule failed to provide any cushion to the domestic airlines to remain competitive. And as the result of this policy, many of the airline companies that had business in India were unable to extend their flights to international destinations. So, moreover, due to the resultant policy, the domestic airlines were too deprived from availing the opportunity of refueling their aircraft outside India. At times when domestic aviation turbine fuel prices were very much higher. So, if one has to believe the industry source, the Kingfisher Airlines, it acquired Air Deccan primarily because the latter had years of domestic flying experience that eventually empowered Kingfisher to gain the permission to go international. So the permission to fly abroad was the solo incentive for Kingfisher through the two airlines and altogether different types of fleet. So this organizational culture and ethos resulting to more challenges for Kingfisher than any synergy. Now with the merger in the place, Kingfisher went international, burned cash like never before, and finally become a debt-trapped airline. And we all know the story how it continued. So this 5 by 20 rule, it acted as a barrier. So what we wanted to know is that the barriers to entry and how the government policy does it. So this 5 by 20 rule acted as a barrier to the entry for the domestic airline from going international. Meanwhile, the foreign airline, they availed the opportunity and captured many of India's international routes. So the next that we have is switching cost. So these switching costs, they are particularly important consideration. So switching costs are what are this? Now these are the expenses. Now expenses that a consumer incurs when they switch from one seller to another. Now this switching cost, it can be physical or psychological also. So in an industry where the switching cost is high, it becomes difficult for a new entrant to establish or survive because the customers are not readily willing to switch. So these costs may be because of advanced technology adopted by the existing firm and also level of convenience that the customer experience in owning a particular product or maybe too because of a strong brand association. Then we have product differentiation. Now, we can take example of the corporation like that of 3M. Now,
That is one of the companies which is known as, the global innovation company, and it was able to differentiate its product in the marketplace and created high entry barriers through, its high levels of innovation. So the people at 3M capture, the spark of the new ideas and transfer them into thousands of ingenious products and, practical application that help make people lives better. Now this 3M's office business. Now it is home to, some of the world's best known brands like Post-it, Scotch, and many others. Then we have economies of scale. So the firms, that operates at a larger scale tend to, get benefits of lower production costs because of economies of scale. Now, over the years, an already established firm in an industry, it might have attained that scale of production. But a new entrant normally would have to, start its operation from a smaller scale. And this in turn it leads to relatively higher cost of production for the new firms and adversely affects its competitive position in the market. Then we have capital requirement. So high capital requirement, it might prevent the new entrants from making investment in an industry. For example, developing telecom infrastructure in rural India, it requires high capital investment as it involves greater logistic risk and also extends the time taken to roll out telecom service. Now, the lack of trained personnel in the rural area to operate and maintain the cellular infrastructure, especially the passive infrastructure such as servers, it is also seen as hurdle for extending telecom service to underpenetrated rural areas. So all this can act as barriers for entering into a market. Now that is the threat of new entrants. Then we have the bargaining power of suppliers. Now this is to tell, sourcing in any industry is amongst, one of the most essential activities a business can have. So organizations, it has a large dependence on the suppliers, and the suppliers has the ability to influence the profitability. That is to tell the supplier's decision on prices, quality of products and services, payment and delivery terms are the various factors that influence buyer's profit potential and in turn determines the profit trends of an industry. So in some cases, you know, a supplier or supplier group, it is said to be powerful. All such cases has been put up in your slide. The first one is importance of the supplier's product to the buyer. That is to tell, when the supplier's products are an important and integral part of buyer's manufacturing process and its product quality, the bargaining power of suppliers will be high. Now, if at all we take the example of automobile industry in India, now the Koya Steering System Limited. Now it is the largest manufacturer of steering system for passenger car and utility vehicle market. So the customers largely include all major vehicle manufacturers in India, such as maybe Maruti Suzuki, Toyota, Hyundai, Tata Motors, Mahindra and Mahindra, General Motors, and Mahindra Renault.
Steering being a specialist competent for the automobile industry, and Sonokoya being the manufacturer of high quality precision steering enables Sonokoya to hold, high command as a supplier in the industry. Then we have the greater concentration among suppliers. So high concentrated industry. Now it is one which is largely dominated by few large firms. Such few firms, hold greater control to influence the industry as the largest share of industry output vests in their hands. So this gives the supplier or the supplier group greater power over those, who do business with them. Now there is a petroleum industry is once a suitable example for this. Then we have importance of the buyer to supplier group. Now in case the purchasing industry buys only a small portion of supplier group's product, then the importance of the buyer to supplier group will be less. That is, for example, the tire industry. Now the sale of bicycle tires is relatively more important as compared to automobile tires before 40 years or 30 years. Now the scenario has changed entirely. So with the changing times, there is change in everything if you observe. Then we have threats of forward integration by supplier. So this is a situation where the suppliers, they are capable of moving up the value chain, and they may think of doing a business that their buyers are already into. It puts the buyers in a disadvantageous situation. Then you have high switching cost for buyers. Mm. In this case, the cost to the buyer of switching supplier is high because of supplier's advantageous position or by the nature of supply itself. Then we have bargaining power of buyers. So these buyers in an industry, now individually or collectively, they're supposed to have stronger bargaining power when they can force a reduction in the price of the supply of or demand a higher quality of product or service, or is being able to seek more value for their purchase in any way. On the other hand, a low buyer bargaining power, it enables a supplier to pass the price increase to the buyer or make the buyer to accept products and services of low quality at a higher price. So the bargaining power of buyers is increased in circumstances such as first one, standard or undifferentiated products. That is to tell when there is no differentiation in the supplies of the product and service. The buyers pressurize the suppliers on price rather than features of the products, because they know that they can always find alternative suppliers. Then we have greater concentration in buyers industry, and the buying volumes are high. Now where the number of buyers is few and the volume of purchase of any buyer is high, the buyer's business, it gains more importance to that of suppliers. For example, the cash and carry format retailers that enjoy aggregated demand, they exert massive pressure on its suppliers' margin. Then we have this threat of you know backward integration by buyers. Now, a situation which is opposite to that of forward integration, which the suppliers attempt to do so, as to have command over the buyers. Now here the buyers, in order to to hold on to their position in much stronger way in the market, they may integrate their business backward. That is close to the raw materials. So this will mean that the buyers undertake the activities of manufacturing or distribution for which they have been dependent on suppliers till now. For example, a textile company, it may go in for backward integration by having its own, you know, thread production. Then there is accurate information of suppliers cost. Supplier's cost structure. Now, a customer who is more informed about the supplier's cost structure is capable of negotiating with suppliers. Now, whenever such customers they notice decline in the supplier's cost, they too would negotiate a proportionate decrease in the price. For example, in present times, when the fuel prices are deregulated or market linked, the customer expects the price of public transportation uh, to fall proportionately with any decline in the prices of crude oil in the international market. Then we have this customer's price sensitivity. Now, the utilitarian customers, whom we can tell, they are the one who seek value and are generally price sensitive in an industry, where the purchase are largely dominated by such customers. The buyers tend to gain advantage in its bargaining power. Then we have threat of the substitute products. Now, you know, a firm it is not only exposed to competition from within but also from outside the industrial products. So these products they may be close substitute for each other that are apparently are different but satisfy the same set of customer needs. Now there was a research, and according to this research, it is estimated that parents buy baby care products for their babies till the time they are 9.5 months old. After which they tend to use their personal care products on the children, and this cross usage of non-baby products or the substitute product, it has restricted the potential growth of products in baby care category. So, if we can take another example of, now what you can see over the right hand side, sorry, left hand side of your slide. Now it is one such example. What happened was there were the bread makers. They were charged of allegation about the presence of carcinogenic chemicals in their product. So the firm, which was offering the substitute product, that is the home appliance for making baked breads at home, left no stone, unturned to avail this opportunity. Now it posed a serious threat to the, bread manufacturers. So the company Glen advertised its product in the local newspaper to boost its sales. Now, through this advertisement, so through this advertisement, the company offered the benefits of baking the bread at home to the customer, making it more attractive over the fat bread that was being sold in the market. However, the competition from substitute product, it depends primarily on some of the factors such as how attractively are the substitute priced in the marketplace, whether the substitutes are able to provide some same level of quality and performance, uh, how straightforwardly the buyers can switch to the substitutes. So these are some of the questions that are to be analyzed. That is to tell, first one we took, how attractively are the substitute priced in the market price. Now, if the market price of the substitutes are far less than that of yours, and it can give a quality of product similar to that you offer, maybe then the competitor's product is attractive compared to that of yours. Then the next one that we can speak of within this Porter's 5-4 model is competitive rivalry. So when the firms in the industry, they are able to exhibit high level of rivalry, the profitability of the industry may be very severely affected. So such rivalry, it may take the form of incubates of the new entrants competing aggressively on the basis of product or service price. So in response to which price cuts are commonly assumed by rivals and ultimately effects in lowering the profits for all the firms in an industry. So what has been put up in the left hand side of your slide, these are the factors which affect competitive rivalry in the industry. That is, first one is competitive structure, second one is industry growth, and third one is exit barrier. Now speaking about this competitive structure, now this competitive structure, what does it mean? It refers to the size of the competition, the number of competitors, and diversity of the competition that exists in an industry. So the different types of competitive structure have different implications for both the new entrants and for new firms and incumbents. So where there are few competitors and all are of similar size, mm, then there is likely to be intense competition as each rival fight for dominance. Whereas on the other hand, where there are few large companies or just one company, the intensity of competition, it may range from the state of neglect to fierce. Especially like in telecom, the firms have collaborate with each other to share the burden of huge investment by having a common tower infrastructure. So in such cases, firms may also adopt a policy that is mutually beneficial to the firms in the industry, while in some other industry there might be prevalence of cutthroat competition, uh, maybe by ways of pricing, delivery, advertising, or after sales services. Then we have the industry growth. Now when the industry growth, speaking about this, whenever the industry growth is sluggish and it shows no symptoms of recovery, in those situations the intensity of rivalry within the industry, it might increase. Then we have exit barrier. So exit barriers, it refers to economic, strategic, and also emotional factors which limit the firms to exit or go away from its business or industry. So even in times of low or negative return. So economic factors, could be high investments committed to plant and machinery, which may not have alternative usage, deterioration of demand conditions, which is resulting to excess capacity, or high fixed cost. Uh, then there is strategic factors, which could be value chain integration or linkages of different business of a firm, maybe such as a firm may have been its own buyer or supplier, or its different business may have been sharing the common pool of resources. While the emotional factors, it could be the sentiments of the management that has been attached uh, to a business, or their commitment towards the employees or other stakeholders like distributor, suppliers. So now it becomes imperative for managers to understand the immediate competitive environment alongside that of the general environment, as it largely influence the business growth potential of an organization. And moreover, for highly diversified companies, the most fundamental issue in corporate strategy is especially to identify uh, the industry, or the line of business in which the company should compete. So this Porter's five force model that we discussed, it helps to identify and also analyze the five competitive force that outlines an industry and explains why in different industries are able to differentiate levels of profitability. The overall attractiveness of the industry does not imply that every firm in the industry will enjoy the same profitability. So with the help of this five force model, the firms are able to determine their strength, and on the other side, they try to overcome their weaknesses to achieve a profit above the industry average. So the next question might be, as why do managers widely use this five force model? Now, why has this been so much useful is one of the question that we'll have to understand, so that we can understand this five force model in a better way. See, earlier I have spoken about five force model. When we spoke in the last session, there we spoke about the elements that are there in the five different forces. Here today, when we spoke about the five force model, if we have observed, we spoke about the factors that affect these five elements. So having studied both this, First, we'll have to know what is the strategic implication of this five competitive forces. Now that we are studying this strategic, management. So these competitive forces, they are never the same for one industry to another or even for one company to another. So the strength of each of the five competitive forces, the nature of the competitive pressures comprising each force and the overall structure of the competition, it exposes what competition is like to be present in a given market. So, as a rule, the stronger the collective impact of competitive forces, the lower the combined profitability of participant firms. So, in contrast, when the collective impact of the five competitive forces is moderate to weak, an industry is competitively attractive. That is in the sense that industry members can reasonably expect to earn good profit and a nice return on investment. So, in other words, by using this Porter's five force analysis, the firms they are likely to generate higher profits of the industry where it is difficult to enter, where there is limited rivalry, buyers are relatively weak, suppliers are relatively weak, there are few substitutes, and on the other hand, the profits they are likely to be low if the industry is easy to enter or there is high degree of rivalry between firms within the industry, or if the buyers are stronger, or if the suppliers are stronger, and if it is easy to switch to alternatives. So, to compete successfully or to contend successfully against competitive force, the managers they must create strategies that that make the firm as much as possible from the five competitive forces, or it influences competitive pressure to change in direction that favors the company, or which is able to build a strong secure position of advantage. So, in most industries, the collective strength of this five competitive force is somewhere near the middle of two extreme of very intense and very weak. So, typically ranging from slightly stronger than normal to slightly weaker than normal, and typically which allows well managed companies with sound strategies to earn attractive profits. So now having spoken about this Porter's five force model, there is this to discuss that why do managers widely use Porter's five force model, the market position of the competitors. So these two probably we shall discuss in next class. Now since I have kept you all